You're watching Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche giving an update on the Justice Department's efforts to release the Epstein files. He says the DOJ is releasing more than 3 million more pages of files today, as well as images and videos. Blanche says the department's only withholding files permitted to be withheld under law, including victims' personal information, depictions of abuse or child pornography, and anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. He also defended the department against accusations it doesn't take child sex abuse cases seriously, pointing to more than 290 arrests over the past several months. Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas is there at that press conference, and ABC's Peter Haralambous is here with us for more on that. So Peter, Blanche says he's releasing more than 3 million documents, but he says people aren't going to be satisfied here. Will this satisfy the terms of the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we'll get a clearer answer to that over the next few hours and days when we actually see what's in these documents. But for now, there are a bunch of concerning signs regarding the compliance with the law. First, we're nearly 40 days late from the deadline Congress set. Todd Blanche said that there are 3 million files here that they aren't releasing. That means about half of these files are still being withheld, he says, for concerns about the victims, but that's still a huge tranche of these files. Beyond that, the DOJ is making wide-ranging redactions here. They have a huge amount of discretion when it comes to that, but there's been in the past pushback to some of those redactions. He noted, for example, that they're redacting the face of basically every woman who appears in these documents with the exception of Ghislaine Maxwell. That's a kind of redaction that could raise some concerns about how far this is going and if they're potentially not showing critical information here. The one thing he did say, though, is that they aren't redacting or holding things back for national security reasons. That's the one definitive answer we got from Deputy Attorney General Blanche. But all things considered, while Blanche is saying this is basically the end of the road for the Department of Justice's role in this, there are still a ton of outstanding questions, and the story, to a certain degree, is just beginning in terms of actually going through these documents.
He also said they're not protecting the president. And then sort of gave Pierre a longer answer. We'll ask Pierre about that once he can get to the microphone. But I know you and the team will now be going through all of these documents over the next few days. What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things that would be kind of needles in this haystack. For example, we understand that in these previous DOJ investigations, prosecutors have done memos where they've basically outlined their reasoning for charging decisions. Those memos are particularly important, specifically the investigation down in Florida. I think that is the biggest needle in this haystack, but it's hard to understate how many documents we're dealing with here. We're talking about terabytes of data, things that have been reviewed by the Department of Justice at this point for nearly 2 decades by probably dozens, if not hundreds, of different investigators. They're just being uploaded en masse to a website, and we basically have to go through those individually to get a sense of what's actually in here, and then beyond what's actually in the documents, the degree to which this is actually complying with the law Congress passed.
Now, Blanche said they are excluding any documents or files or material that could jeopardize or be part of a federal investigation. Just 2 months ago, the Attorney General launched an investigation into Democrats associated with Jeffrey Epstein. How could that affect what's in this latest release? How broad is that in terms of documents that could be left behind here?
No, it's a great question because it could be massively broad, right? And that investigation didn't really have that many strict parameters. It was basically, as you mentioned, back in November, where Attorney General Pam Bondi basically triggered this investigation, which is being led by the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Manhattan. But any documents theoretically related to that investigation could theoretically be withheld. And to the extent that that investigation, which was kind of at the impetus of President Trump, targeted specific Democrats, it's possible that any of those relevant documents are being withheld. Again, triggering more concerns, more potential alarm bells here.
And again, I want to go to our Pierre Thomas, who's actually there. Pierre, we heard you asking Todd Blanche if he can assure that anything in these files relevant to the president is being released, or that everything relevant to the president in these files is being released. What did you make of his response?
He said that it was. I think I asked that question because I think that's the question that most people would expect us to ask, because he serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States. The President of the United States has been mentioned in those files. We know this. We've seen certain images of President Trump in the files. So he gave an unequivocal answer in saying yes. We now have to go through this painstaking process of reviewing 3 million files. And that is the process that we're going to have to go through today. The DOJ is not really giving any signposts of what to look for. It's essentially on the media, those of us who cover DOJ, to do this work. And it will take some time. We'll try to be diligent in doing it. I found it interesting in terms of this presentation in the press conference that the Deputy Attorney General wanted to make the case that they were doing this in a way to try to protect the victims at the same time and be in compliance with the law passed by Congress, overwhelmingly, I might add. And, he deflected somewhat the whole issue of, the issue of whether the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who was, promoting this, that they were going to release these files. And then what happened later in the year of last year where they said, look, basically, because there's no reason to prosecute anyone further, it would be inappropriate to release these files. And then there was the furor that took place in Washington and across the country. And Congress passed a law and they had to react. And he said that they've responded and responded accordingly.
Pierre, the deadline, as Peter points out, to release all these files per the law was December 19th. Lawmakers have accused the Attorney General of breaking the law and stalling this release. Could Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche face consequences for that?
Well, we'll have to see what Congress does now. There's been, as you said, a lot of very direct criticism by members of Congress saying that the law said get this done in 30 days, and they didn't do that. And so the pushback from the Deputy Attorney General today was saying that, look, we had 6 million files to go through. If you stacked them on top of each other, he said it would be 2 Eiffel Towers, I think is what he said. They were making the case that they had volumes and volumes of material to go through, and they had to painstakingly make sure that they did not do anything to harm victims. He said that there are no photographs of women depicted in the videos that are being released, but that any male that was relevant is being released.
Blanche also revealed the DOJ is open to civil rights investigation into the shooting death of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. What are you watching for there?
Well, I think the key thing here is how aggressive will it be? It's clear that the FBI is now investigating it. Blanche made news in being very clear that the Civil Rights Division would actually be involved. That is not the case in the death of Ms. Good. In this particular case, the FBI is conducting an investigation. He said that the Civil Rights Division, as needed, would be consulted in the case. And so, again, right now, part of the challenge here is that a number of things said by top administration officials early on in this process proved not to be true. And Secretary Noem's comments about the gun being somehow the reason why the officers approached Preddy did not turn out to hold out. So there's a lot of credibility issues here that the Justice Department and all of the administration are just going to have to deal with.
All right. And Peter, quickly, what are you watching for next in terms of the Epstein files now?
Yeah, this is going to be a days-long, if not weeks-long process. So it's going to be slow, it's going to be tedious, but it's going to require overall a ton of care. We're going to download these files as they become available from the Department of Justice and literally go through them page by page. So we'll see over the coming days what the big news is here.
All right. And we should point out President Trump has denied any wrongdoing and any knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Peter Haralambous, thank you both.